and welcome to the Data Center Podcast, brought to you by BizClick and our sponsors for this series, the Data Center Magazine. Are you ready to plug into the future of digital infrastructure? Well, you've come to the right place, because on the Data Center Podcast, we're exploring a world where connectivity is faster, storage is smarter, and the digital landscape is consistently evolving. Every week, we bring you straight to the source, interviewing the innovators, the engineers, and the brilliant minds building and operating the facilities that power the modern world. If you're curious about how the physical backbone of the internet is actually changing our lives, then you're in the right place. Let's start nice and easy. Can you tell me who you are and what you do?
Sure, Ella, I can do that. So I'm Michael Winterson, and I am the Secretary General of the European Data Center Association. And it is as boring as it sounds.
So why do you say it's boring? It doesn't sound boring at all.
I've worked in this industry for 27 years, and I guess we started noticing about 7 or 8 years ago weird journalism about our industry, a bit negative, a bit confused, and we started meeting politicians and started realizing that when they talk about the cloud, they really truly thought like the compute technology lived in the ether. And it was a very difficult process of informing them. And then when they started realizing that we build these big, gray, ugly buildings that use a lot of electricity, they started getting very angry about that. So we are doing something really important, but it's from a negative place we're trying to build back from, to build the trust and explain why these buildings exist.
So you've said you've been in this for 27 years. So tell me about your background. How did you end up in this space?
Yeah. So I've been in tech startups since 1988. That's dating myself.
And a good place to be in 1988.
And I was, programming relational databases on the first sort of client server technology with basic Ethernet networking. And oh my God, it's a while ago. Shit. Anyways, during that time, I just loved technology, and I got involved with various tech startups, anywhere from hardware to software to import and export. And then it was around about 1999 that a colleague of mine showed me this article about this company called Equinix and said, we can do this in Europe. Let's do this in Europe. And so we set up IX Europe in 1999 and ultimately sold ourselves to Equinix in 2007.
So now, obviously, you're sitting on the European... What did you call it? The European
Data Center Association, yes.
The European Data Center Association. How did you end up there?
So, like I said, 10 years ago, I was still working in a senior commercial role in Equinix's European management team. And we were worried about this negativity in the press and thought we had to do something about it. And at the time, I met some people that had founded the European Data Center Association, which at the time was flailing. It was 5 or 6 years in. It didn't really have a purpose. And they invited me in, and it was a set of people. It was a Global Switch, Lambda Helix out of Greece. It was Digital Realty. A couple other guys, Schneider Electric, said, can you come in and help us? And I realized very quickly that we needed to have a policy engine to speak to Brussels and educate. And that's how I got involved. It was part-time. Equinix supported it. And ultimately, when I left Equinix, I retired.
The seat was open.
Well, I retired. And they said, couldn't you do this while you're retired? And I said, okay, sure.
So your day-to-day then at the European Data Center Association,
yeah.
Tell me what it looks like.
Wow. All right. So the purpose of the association is for the interests of the data center community in Europe. And when I say Europe, it's not just Brussels. It includes the UK, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland. And we're trying to speak to vendors and operators, but also there's a lot of national trade associations, like here in the UK's Tech UK or German Data Center Association, or a variety of them around Europe. We coordinate and work with them. We work with the operators of data centers, from large hyperscalers to small European companies. And we work with vendors into this space about what is the technology that we think we should deploy to achieve climate neutrality, to help build tech sovereignty, and to, of course, just grow the business.
In a world driven by AI, cloud computing, and massive scale, the digital infrastructure industry never stops moving. But are you keeping pace? Stay ahead of the curve with Data Center Magazine, Join the global community shaping the digital future. Visit datacentermagazine.com today to never miss an update. That's datacentermagazine.com. So, do you ever call yourself EUDCA? Or is it always the European Data Center Association?
Oh, so actually, I've heard several things. So if I say the acronym, I say EUDCA. Okay. Funny enough that you say that, a French colleague of mine said, "Oh, what are you doing at EUDCA?" And I'm going, "What? EUDCA?" And I'm going, "I don't know what EUDCA."
You're like, "What's that?"
What's that? And it took a while, and I finally got it. So no, I generally try to say the name because our industry is obsessed with three-letter acronyms. And so we say three-letter acronyms all day long. And
we love an acronym.
We assume people know what they mean. So I'm pretty strict about it's the European Data Center Association.
Okay, fabulous. Good to know. So obviously the European Data Center Association's 2026 report has described the sector as being at a structural inflection point.
Yes.
So with the EU aiming to triple processing capacity by 2030,
yes,
how can we realistically bridge that gap between that ambition and the reality of what power is available?
Okay, wow. There's like 6 questions in there. So we park power for a minute, come back to that as a completely separate topic. So the problem is that Europe has a digital brain less than half the size of America's digital brain. The installed capacity of data centers and compute in Europe is well less than 50%. And this is now actually showing up in economic statistics. And so European policymakers are freaking out that they have a teeny tiny little digital brain. And the issue is regulation, planning permissions, local policies, whatever they are, and power, we'll come to power. And they're saying, what can we do to try to catch up to America? And so they make this bold statement, we're going to triple capacity. And I'm going, yeah, but you're giving us this carrot over here, but you're actually regulating the holy crap out of us over here. And so we need to discuss. And so that's the big game right now is we get why you're trying to regulate us. You see us as critical national infrastructure. You see us as resource intense. But if you overregulate here, you'll never triple your capacity.
So what needs to be done then?
All right. And again, parking power for a different discussion. What we're trying to get across to the European policymakers is that everybody is now trying to regulate data centers. Can I use what kind of chilling fluids I can use in my data center? Do I have high GWP? Can I be more flexible and run on my generators? Well, maybe, but then I'm going to emit huge amounts of Scope 1 carbon emissions and particulates. Can't I just turn them off? Can't you just be a better citizen? Can't you use less water? And so we have all these regulations are coming at us, telling us what to do and how to run data centers. And we're turning around saying, that's fine. We can do all of this. We're engineers. But at some point it would become so expensive, no one can buy it. And so we're trying to get the regulators to realize that you can ask engineers to build anything. We can ultimately build a rocket to go to the moon, but it will be bloody expensive. So be smart about what you're asking us to do so that you can catch up. And that's the big topic.
So let's come back to the power then.
Yeah.
So how can we ensure that there is enough power to, achieve these ambitious goals?
So power has a generation problem and a transmission problem. So when we plug anything into the wall, we are actually contracting 2 things. We're contracting with a generator to make the electrons and the transmission company to actually bring them to us, the grid. So the grid is only one player in the game. But right now, what's happening is the grid is in Europe, the grid is over-engineered. It's an excellent grid, but it doesn't have enough capacity. It's almost the exact opposite of the US. The grid's relatively weak, but generally has a lot of capacity and can add more. So we have to deal with this issue of an over-engineered but undersupplied grid. If we can solve that, we will release huge quantities of energy to the market and then look at ways to invest in the grid over the next 10 or 15 years to make it better. That's me being an optimist. The reality is grids are scared of making capital investments. Governments can't think this way. They've always thought of grids as growing really, really slowly, whereas we're saying this is a sea change. You need to grow
and it needs
fast.
to happen immediately.
It needs to happen immediately. And we also keep trying to point out that of all the demand that we represent that apparently is causing a problem, we're trying to say, no, we're not a cause of the problem. We're a signal, a symptom. When you electrify transportation and industry and home heating, that represents 10 times more energy requirement on the grid than our entire industry. So we're not the problem. We're just an early warning sign, a canary in the coal mine telling you, you've got a grid problem and you need to invest. We've got a couple members who are specifically looking at solutions to deploy AI into grids, which can almost immediately release capacity to the market. The grids, of course, are afraid of this, but they could do it tomorrow.
And do you ever see a future where the data centers are actually more of a solution for the grid, where they're giving back power?
So the answer is yes, relatively quietly, not public, to be public in 7 days. We will be announcing a partnership with the European Commission, specifically DG Energy, Directorate General Energy, so the people in charge of the whole system, and a group called ENSO-E, a trade association for the grid operators, and the European Data Center Association are working together to define a next generation of data center design where we will become better corporate citizens to the network. And I could bore you with this if you want, or we can just leave it there. It's your choice.
I mean, please bore me.
Oh, really? I get told this all the time. It's sad. Please bore me. Okay, so the first thing is everybody says, why aren't data centers more flexible? What do you mean? Like if I say data centers should be more flexible, what do you think that means?
I don't actually know. What does that mean?
But the point is that you immediately have an image of a data center doing something, like a sponge or doing yoga, or whatever. Yeah. And the reality is that you have to first define what flexibility is. And there's actually 4 areas that we can focus on. The first one is we don't forecast very well. We think we do, but we don't. We will tell the grid what we want, and we will insist, because they have to as a monopoly, to respond to us. And so we're saying, I want 100 megawatts. And they're saying, okay, I'll see you in a decade. That's today's problem. What if we said, I want 100 megawatts 7 years from now, and I need a contract today so I can raise the finance to do my project, but I might take 20 megawatts now, and I might give you a forecast of when I hit 30, 40, 50. Therefore, you can put the capital in only when it's needed. Whole new relationship.
Yeah. And almost turning the flexibility around onto that.
Yeah. And giving them the foresight to be able to invest, and they can then turn around and say, oh, okay, well, I can give you 20 megawatts tomorrow. Yeah, I can turn my data center on, and I will give you 100 megawatts in 7 years. Other flexibilities are things like electricity is a perfect, well, we dream of electricity being a perfect sine wave of 50 hertz and 230 volts. We build huge UPS infrastructure to give that to our clients. What if a percentage of that could be pointed back at the grid? So when the grid has a wobble, we could actually use our systems to support the grid. And this is the actual true definition of flexibility. It's things like frequency support and low voltage support. And then finally, there's ways like when we are connected to the grid, if we don't like the grid, we just turn off and go to generator. And maybe an hour later, we come back on again. That actually is like letting go of a rubber band. When you let go of a rubber band, what happens to the other side? It hurts.
Yeah, you get.
So when we take ourselves off the grid because the grid is wobbling, the grid actually can cascade and turn off huge sways. And this has happened at gigawatt scale in Virginia. This has happened at multi-hundred megawatt scale in Dublin. And so what if we created a new way of being connected where we never actually let go of the rubber band? We actually agreed to design a data center that could flex with the grid. And that requires a redesign. So it won't be today's data centers, but the next generation of data centers, we could flip our systems around to be more helpful when the grid itself is actually saying, hey, I need support.
And something urgently important, really, that kind of symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
So speaking of gigafactories,
yes,
you guys have highlighted Poland as a breakout market for gigafactories.
Yes.
So why do you think Eastern Europe is succeeding in attracting that infrastructure where traditional places aren't?
So let's not say Eastern Europe, because actually a lot of the countries that are in Eastern Europe don't have adequate grid capacity today to even swallow a gigafactory. Like I've met with Slovenia and talked to them about it, and at most they have 200 megawatts of spare capacity. So they couldn't take a gigawatt factory. So what's going on is Poland has two interesting things that people don't understand. The first one is that since Solidarnosc and Lech Walesa in the 1980s, when it declared independence from the Soviet system and turned westward towards Europe, the economy has gone through just a ridiculous transformation. You have a hugely educated workforce, and you have an economy ready and flexible enough to grab the digital economy. The other thing you have is you have huge swathes of capacity in the grid that are underutilized, especially in the north. Most of the energy generation and industry is in the south, but in the north, you have the same grid, but nobody's using it. And you have access to renewable energy in the Baltic Sea. So the plan is to build a huge wind farm in the Baltic Sea and to effectively land that energy and deliver it into data center campuses in the north. So I think Poland sees the vision, has a vision, it's joined up, it's circular, it's renewable, and I think they're executing against it. So I compare Poland to the Nordic states, which to me are also well ahead, and all of them are also going to be giga scale, all four of them, Finland, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. And I also see the same thing is going to happen in Spain, most likely Italy and Portugal.
So what then can the rest of Europe learn from Poland?
So I think the problem you've got, again, is because we haven't been good forecasters into our existing markets, we have kept growing and growing and growing in Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris, and Dublin, and literally until the pips have squeaked, and then the local markets just say stop. And this isn't unique to Europe. This has happened in Singapore. This has happened in Loudoun County, west of Washington, D.C., where we just keep asking for more until finally someone says, stop. So the big learning here is that there's a right size. And if the government is proactive and we're proactive working with the government of these countries, we can plan for it and work together. We used to be so secretive. We have to unfortunately become much, much more transparent. So what's happening is we've seen stop in these 5 markets, and they're digesting the current problem. And each of them is coming back and looking at our market and deciding whether they want to continue supporting it or not. Right now, I think the market that is most likely to make the transition to support is the German market. And our forecast shows the German market becoming the stellar standout winner in the growth in Europe.
Fabulous. So we've got time for one more question.
Sure.
So as we move towards 2030,
Yes.
many operators are looking at microgrids and on-site generation.
Yes.
Do you see the data center of the future acting more like a utility that feeds heat and power to the to the local area, to the grid, rather than just being a consumer of it?
So how much time do we have to answer the question?
We've got about 5 minutes.
Oh, good. Okay. So let me start with the last part. You talk about selling heat into the grid. This is a fundamental problem in that energy generation is typically to burn a fossil fuel or run a nuclear power plant, which creates huge quantities of steam and heat. Super valuable to heat networks who've been using it for 150 years. As we move to renewable energies, that heat goes away. So where do the grids get their heat? And many of them are actually literally burning their own fossil fuel to make heat. So it's out of the frying pan and into the fire. They're not solving the problem. So we represent a ridiculously healthy source of green heat. We know this, and we have partnered up with Euro Heat and Power, which is Europe's trade association for heat networks. And we're going to be announcing as well a heat platform where we try to map sources of heat across all of Europe to demands for heat and create contracting tools for that. So that's one thing we can do. I think the other problem you mentioned, off or on-site or off-grid, we are looking at this. And in fact, many of us are deploying on-site generation. And the two solutions that we've got today that are available today and cheap is to replace diesel with HVO fuels and use diesel generators more. Now, we'll never be able to use them for days on end, but we can use them for several hours at a time. And using HVOs, generally carbon-free. very expensive, not a scalable market, but it uses existing inventory that's already installed. The next step is gas, natural gas. And so you get gas turbines, and I'm now generating a super high quality heat, and I can run my data center on gas. But I've committed to 2030 to be carbon neutral. So I have a problem. My scope 1 emissions are going through the roof. How do I offset those? And I don't see a bridge to a green fuel. I mean, I belong to the Green Hydrogen Alliance. I work very closely with them. I don't see hydrogen being a solution. Lex Coors, who's our president, and he's also at Digital Realty, he's in the SMR Alliance looking at nuclear. And he's like, Michael, it's a talking shop. At best, we're 10 years away from the first nuclear power. So the only on-site solution is natural gas. And it's unfortunate because gas is expensive in Europe and it has a huge scope 1 emission. So it's a necessary evil. We don't want it, but we are adopting it because we have no recourse.
But then it's a way, I guess, to make consumers of a place think, actually, we don't mind the data center being our neighbor because they are giving back to us.
Yes. We try. Unfortunately, when you're in a negative political space and a negative journalistic space, it's very hard to recover. Think of an ex-boyfriend or a friend who slighted you. I mean,
I don't want to.
Okay, but I mean, all I'm saying is, it's hard to recover from that, and we have this negative persona. So yes, we will continue to give, but it's going to take a long time to win back, I think, faith and trust. So we'll work on it, and we'll hopefully get there over the next 5 or 6 years.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot of work to get there.
Yeah.
So we want to end the podcast where you ask our next guest a question.
Oh, God.
So what would that one question be to our next guest? You can make it as hard as possible.
This is going to be in the data center space, right?
In the data center space.
Okay. What's the most embarrassing thing you've ever done in a data center?
Okay. Well, that's tune in for that one. The answers to that one are going to be wild. But thank you so much,
By the way,
Michael.
I have stories there too, but not for today.
You can't tease me like that. You have to give me at least one.
So I did a modeling shoot for our marketing agency because we were too poor to afford actual models. And so I pretended I was a technician plugging in cables in a rack. And that became part of our marketing campaign back at IX Europe.
Fantastic. That doesn't sound embarrassing. That actually sounds great.
Well, it was embarrassing. So everybody's laughing at my picture in the industry like, oh, I saw you. Yeah.
Oh, well, brilliant. You've been a fantastic first guest. So thank you so much, Michael.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the Data Center Podcast. Before you go, don't forget we want to hear from you. Got a tough question about power usage effectiveness? A tricky issue with cooling optimization? Or maybe you're an industry leader with an incredible data center innovation story to share and you want to appear on the show? Send us your burning questions or your speaker pitch. You can easily drop us a line at editor@datacentermagazine.com. Please remember to email from your business email address. We'll be back next week to help you build bigger, run cooler, and maybe even achieve that zero carbon goal. Until then, keep those racks full and your bandwidth high. See you next time.